My friends, for decades, the world watched a familiar pattern, one nation leading, others following. A system built on dominance, influence, and control. But today, the winds of change are blowing across the globe. The strategies that once shaped nations, the plans that once seemed unshakable, are beginning to unravel. Because in the 21st century, leadership is not defined by power, it's defined by purpose. India, a nation once seen as a developing dream, now stands as a defining force. Its rise is not an accident of history. It's a result of discipline, determination, and a deep belief in its own potential. India didn't wait for permission to lead. It built, it innovated, and it inspired. Technology, education, and a growing sense of unity have turned challenges into opportunities. While others debated, India decided. While others doubted, India delivered. And in doing so, it didn't just change its own destiny, it began to reshape the global order. Now this moment calls for reflection. Not fear, not rivalry, but respect, because leadership in this new era is not about who holds the most power. It's about who uses that power to lift others, to bring progress, to spark hope. The truth is simply, when one nation rises with integrity, the world rises with it. And as America rethinks its place in this shifting world, India shows us that progress doesn't come from holding others back. It comes from moving forward together. The world is not turning away from old powers. It's turning toward new possibilities. And in that future, every nation that believes in innovation, equality, and purpose has a place at the table. The world we live in today is not the same as the one we knew a few decades ago. For much of modern history, the balance of global power was shaped by a handful of nations that dictated terms, set economic standards, and defined the political agenda for the rest of the world. Their strategies were built on control, economic influence, military strength, technological supremacy. For years, this system appeared unshakable, almost eternal. But history has a way of humbling even the strongest structures. Today, that old order is beginning to show its cracks. The strategies that once brought success are no longer guaranteed to work in a world that moves faster, thinks deeper, and connects instantly. The era of one-sided dominance is fading, replaced by a world where power is shared, not imposed. The information age has democratized opportunity. Knowledge, innovation, and creativity are no longer confined to the borders of the most powerful nations. They are rising from every corner of the earth. The truth is, the foundations of old strategies are being tested by new realities. Global influence is no longer about how much land a country controls or how many weapons it owns, but how well it can connect, communicate, and cooperate. Nations that once ruled through authority are now being challenged by those that lead through adaptability. The greatest resources today are not oil, gold, or territory. They are ideas, innovation, and human potential. What we are witnessing is not merely a shift in politics or economics, but a transformation in mindset. The world has grown tired of being told who leads and who follows. People everywhere are demanding a more balanced order, one where leadership is earned through vision and value, not by history or hierarchy. This shift doesn't mean that traditional powers disappear. It means they must evolve. They must learn to share influence, to listen as much as they speak, and to work alongside rather than above. And as this evolution unfolds, we are seeing new nations step into the light, nations that were once seen as participants, not players. They are now defining their own path, crafting their own narrative, and reshaping the systems that once limited them. It is not rebellion, it is renewal. The unraveling of the old order is not a collapse, it is a correction, a moment when the world recognizes that power cannot be permanent and leadership must be earned anew with every generation. In this new era, dominance gives way to cooperation, Arrogance yields to understanding. And the measure of strength is no longer control, but contribution. The world's center of gravity is shifting, not because the powerful are falling, but because others are rising, and the future will belong to those who recognize that progress is greatest when it is shared. India's rise on the global stage did not happen overnight. It is the result of decades of resilience, vision, and an unshakable belief in progress. For a long time, the world underestimated India. Many saw it as a nation defined by its challenges, poverty, population, and politics. But beneath those challenges lay a force of determination, creativity, and unity that was quietly reshaping the nation from within. What we are witnessing now is not a sudden surge of success, but the culmination of years of disciplined effort, strategic reform, and an unwavering focus on self-reliance. India understood something that many great powers often forget: true strength is built from the ground up. It does not come from imposing influence abroad, but from empowering people at home. Through steady investments in technology, education, and infrastructure, India transformed its weaknesses into opportunities. It turned its youth population, once seen as a burden, into a generation of thinkers, innovators, and dreamers. It built an economy rooted not only in consumption, but in creation. It didn't wait for others to open doors, it learned to build its own. In the realm of technology, India has become a powerhouse. From the digital revolution that brought millions online to advancements in space exploration, software development, and artificial intelligence, the nation has made it clear that it no longer follows trends, it sets them. Its tech hubs, universities, and startup ecosystems are now shaping global innovation. Where others saw risk, India saw potential. Where others hesitated, India acted. This courage to embrace change, to lead with vision rather than fear, has become the cornerstone of its rise. Education and knowledge have also played a defining role. By investing in human capital, India realized that its greatest resource was not under the ground, it was in the minds of its people. Millions of engineers, scientists, and professionals now contribute not only to India's progress, but to the advancement of the world. This intellectual export has become a symbol of trust, credibility, and global competence. It has allowed India to extend its influence far beyond borders through partnerships, diplomacy, and collaboration. But perhaps what truly sets India apart is its ability to lead without dominating. It understands the value of dialogue, of balance, of coexistence. In a world often divided by politics and power struggles, India has mastered the art of diplomacy rooted in respect. It builds bridges where others build barriers. It seeks cooperation, not confrontation. Whether it's in international trade, technology partnerships, or global climate initiatives, India's approach is guided by a sense of purpose that transcends competition. The transformation of India from a regional participant to a global architect is not merely economic, it is philosophical. It sends a message to the world that leadership in this century will not come from intimidation or legacy, but from innovation and integrity. As America's long-standing strategies face new realities, India's rise offers a contrasting model, one that proves influence can come from inspiration, not imposition. It is a reminder that the future belongs to nations that invest not only in their power, but in their people, their principles, and their potential. Leadership in its truest form has never been about control. It has always been about character. For centuries, the world often confused power with leadership, believing that the nation with the strongest army, the largest economy, or the loudest voice naturally stood at the head of the global table. But in our time, that definition has begun to shift. The old idea that leadership means domination no longer fits a world where influence spreads through ideas faster than through armies. We now live in an age where the most effective leaders are not those who command obedience, but those who inspire belief. This redefinition of leadership is perhaps the most profound transformation of our generation. It's no longer enough to dictate policy or project might. Nations must earn trust, credibility, and respect. People across the world are more connected, more informed, and more empowered than ever before. They no longer follow because they are told, they follow because they are moved. In this new landscape, leadership is measured by the ability to inspire progress, to unite diverse voices, and to act not only in one's own interest, but for the common good. India embodies this new kind of leadership. Its rise has not come through coercion or conquest, but through collaboration and compassion. It has learned to use soft power as effectively as others once wielded hard power. Its culture, values, and democratic spirit have become tools of influence far greater than any weapon or wealth. When India speaks of unity and diversity, it is not a slogan, it is a reflection of its reality. That ability to hold together a billion voices, to find harmony amid complexity, demonstrates a leadership philosophy the world can learn from. True leadership, as India has shown, does not require one to stand above others, but to walk alongside them. It's about partnership, not patronage. It's about lifting others while rising oneself. The nation's approach to global issues, whether in technology sharing, climate cooperation, or humanitarian aid, shows a model of leadership that values contribution over competition. It is not about saying, we will lead because we are stronger, but rather, we will lead because we can serve. That humility, that quiet strength, is what gives India its moral authority. This evolution also highlights an important truth: leadership without empathy is unsustainable. A country can command fear for a moment, but only compassion earns loyalty for generations. India's diplomatic stance often reflects this understanding. It speaks to all, listens to all, and stands firm without being aggressive. That kind of leadership does not provoke, it persuades. It does not divide, it unites. In a time when the world faces challenges that transcend borders, climate change, inequality, technology disruption, this style of leadership is not only noble, it's necessary. And so, as traditional powers struggle to adapt to this changing dynamic, India's example provides a vision for what leadership in the modern age should look like. It proves that you don't need to rule the world to lead it. You need to guide it, inspire it, and believe in its potential. The nations that will define the future are not those that seek to control others, but those that empower others to succeed. Leadership, then, becomes not an act of dominance, but an act of faith in people, faith in progress, and faith in the shared destiny of humanity. In every era of change, nations face a defining question: will they choose rivalry or resilience? History is filled with examples of powers that fell because they saw competition as a battle to be won rather than a test to be endured. But there are also stories of nations that rose not by defeating others, but by mastering themselves. India belongs to the latter. Its success in the modern world has not come from seeking conflict or comparison. It has come from an unyielding spirit of perseverance, from the quiet strength of a nation that refused to be broken by its struggles. For decades, India was underestimated, doubted, even dismissed. Colonialism had stripped it of wealth, identity, and confidence. The years that followed independence were not easy. The challenges were immense: poverty, illiteracy, political divisions, and economic constraints. But through it all, India learned the power of patience. It learned that true progress takes time, and that endurance is a strength greater than any show of aggression. While other nations built their influence through dominance, India built its foundation through determination. It faced every crisis, economic, social, and political, not with despair, but with resolve. This resilience has become the heartbeat of India's rise. It is what allowed the nation to rebuild from the ground up, to transform hardship into innovation, and to turn doubt into motivation. India's democracy, no matter how chaotic or complex, taught its people to debate without destruction, to disagree without division. It gave rise to a society that believes in progress through persistence, not through force. And that resilience is what now sets it apart in the global arena. In today's world, competition between nations is often portrayed as a zero-sum game. One must fall for another to rise. But India's story offers a different perspective. It shows that advancement does not require rivalry. Growth does not demand hostility. India's development model is rooted in coexistence. It builds relationships, not rivalries. Even as it competes globally in trade, technology, and defense, its approach remains one of strategic balance rather than provocation. It seeks to stand tall without casting shadows on others. This approach stems from a deep cultural understanding that power grounded in peace endures longer than power rooted in fear. India's spiritual and philosophical traditions have always emphasized the strength that comes from within, the strength of self-mastery, self-belief, and self-discipline. These are not just moral ideals, they are strategic virtues. In a world increasingly polarized by ideology and conflict, India's ability to remain steady, to navigate pressures without losing its center, is not weakness, it is wisdom. Resilience also manifests in how India faces global challenges. Whether it is navigating economic recessions, pandemics, or geopolitical tension, India's strategy has always been to adapt rather than react. Instead of allowing circumstances to dictate its path, it learns, recalibrates, and moves forward. That calm persistence, built over generations, has given the country a kind of quiet momentum that cannot be easily disrupted. When we look closely, we see that India's rise is not the story of a nation racing to outdo others. It is the story of a nation determined to outgrow itself. It is about constant self-improvement, not competition for superiority. This mindset reflects a profound truth. Real power is not about outshining others, but about becoming the best version of oneself. In choosing resilience over rivalry, India has demonstrated that progress achieved through patience is progress that lasts. The rest of the world is beginning to understand that this is not just a moral stance, it is a strategic one. The nations that thrive in the future will be those that learn endurance, that stay true to their values amid uncertainty, and that focus on building rather than breaking. India's example reminds us that strength forged in peace is more sustainable than strength built on conflict. It teaches that resilience is not the absence of struggle, it is the art of turning struggle into strength and adversity into opportunity. The world stands today at a crossroads of power and perception. For much of the last century, the global balance of influence was dominated by a few nations whose decisions shaped economies, dictated policies, and often decided the fates of others. But that era is gradually fading into history. The power structures that once seemed permanent are shifting, and the stage of world affairs is being redefined by new actors. Among them, India has emerged not as a challenger seeking to disrupt, but as a stabilizer seeking to redefine what leadership means in the 21st century. This shift is not the result of a single event or sudden change. It is the outcome of decades of transformation in how nations think about power. America's traditional dominance was built on military might, technological innovation, and economic supremacy. But as the world evolves, influence is being measured by different standards: cooperation, credibility, and contribution. The old formula of power projection no longer guarantees respect. In a globalized, digital, and interconnected world, authority must now be earned through relevance, not merely through strength. India's rise marks a new chapter in this evolving order. While America continues to reassess its strategies, recalibrating its foreign policy and economic outlook, India has been steadily expanding its reach economically, technologically, and diplomatically. Its success has not come through confrontation, but through strategic patience. India has mastered the art of balance, maintaining strong ties with global powers while pursuing its independent interests. It speaks with confidence, but not arrogance. It asserts itself without aggression. This approach has allowed India to stand as a bridge between the global North and South, the East and the West, a role few nations can credibly claim. In trade and economy, India has become a vital pillar of global growth. As many advanced nations face stagnation, India's expanding middle class and digital infrastructure have turned it into one of the world's most dynamic markets. Its influence stretches far beyond commerce. It shapes supply chains, drives technological collaboration, and supports regional stability. The world's largest democracies, once operating on parallel paths, now find themselves in dialogue about how to sustain balance in a world that is both competitive and cooperative. Diplomatically, India's presence on international platforms has grown immensely. Whether in climate negotiations, peacekeeping missions, or global health initiatives, it acts as a voice of reason and representation for the developing world. Its stance is often one of equilibrium, firm but fair, assertive yet inclusive. This balanced approach has earned India both respect and reliability, qualities that are increasingly rare in an age of political polarization. Culturally and ideologically, India also projects a kind of soft power that extends beyond politics. Its values, pluralism, tolerance, and unity in diversity resonate globally. They offer a counter-narrative to the divisive tendencies of nationalism and fear that have gripped much of the modern world. India's example demonstrates that a nation can rise to power without abandoning humility, that it can lead with confidence without losing compassion. This rebalancing of influence signals something profound. The world is no longer revolving around a single axis of power. Instead, it is evolving into a network of shared leadership where multiple nations contribute to global progress in unique ways. America, for all its strength and legacy, is learning to adapt to this multipolar reality. Its strategies must now account for the rise of nations like India that are not adversaries, but equals, partners in shaping a more inclusive future. And this is what makes the current moment so significant. The balance of global influence is not shifting because one nation has fallen. It is shifting because others have risen. India's emergence is not a threat to any established power. It is a signal that leadership can take many forms. It shows that innovation, integrity, and independence can be as powerful as armies and alliances. The New World Order will not be defined by who controls the most, but by who contributes the most. This transformation is not a competition, it is an evolution. It marks the maturity of global civilization, where influence is no longer the privilege of a few, but the collective responsibility of many. And as India steps confidently into this new era, it stands as proof that leadership can be reimagined, not as a race for dominance, but as a shared journey toward progress, peace, and purpose. The future that lies before us is not one owned by a single nation or driven by a single ideology. It is a shared horizon shaped by cooperation, understanding, and mutual growth. Humanity has entered a stage where no country, no matter how powerful, can solve global challenges alone. Whether it is climate change, economic inequality, technological disruption,